Hello and welcome to Self Talk. I'm Rachel Astarte. Today, my guest is Coach Lee Hopkins. He is a transgender man who helps people create lasting friendships. After struggling with loneliness most of his life, he's developed various ways to discover himself in it. And thank you, Coach Lee, for being here.
Rachel, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for your invitation.
Yeah, I'm excited about this interview, so I want to jump right in.
Yeah.
The topic today is being a friend to yourself, which is a near and dear topic to my heart. Just to give you some background, when I was about, I don't know, 7 or 8, I found this book called How to Be Your Own Best Friend. And it changed my life. And I thought, well, that's really cool because I'm right here. And so I don't have to do anything except befriend this person. And it sounds a lot easier than I think it is. So I would love to turn this over to you and ask you, how did you get in to this field, of this area of work, and what was your calling?
Wow. I have to say, I'd like to comment on your sharing your story there about being a friend to yourself and discovering that you can do that and that is possible, because that wasn't something that I understood until maybe my late 20s, early 30s. I didn't understand that that was a possibility and that was something that I needed to do. And so my story is that I've been struggling to create friendships for a long time. I've been struggling. I've been watching people. I've been listening to the sayings out there that say you need to just find your tribe. You need to just be yourself. You need to just do this and just do
Mm,
that. And like, wow, it sounds so easy. But the idea, the thought of becoming a friend to yourself or a friend to myself had not occurred to me until decades after being alive on this planet. And so when I discovered that, um, that was one of the prerequisites before I could make any genuine friendships with anyone.
mm,
I had to tell everybody about it. That was the thing. That's how I became a coach, is like, well, I struggled. I grew up in Ohio. A little bit about my story is I grew up in Ohio and I tried to make connections with people there, small town. And I just figured, well, I mean, it's not my tribe. So I went to college and I met new people from different places, countries, backgrounds, and still I felt kind of disconnected from the people there. And so I thought, well, Ohio's messed up. So I need to leave
mm,
Ohio and I need to go find my tribe in California. And sure enough, I met some really awesome people there. I mean, I met really awesome people all over on the journey, but I thought, well, this was going to fix it. Being in California was going to change everything, and I'm going to meet new people and create the kind of friendships I deserve, I want. And I did make some great friends. People knew me, they saw me, I was visible to them, but I still felt lonely and
mm,
disconnected.
mhm, mhm,
I still felt lonely and disconnected. And so I moved from California. I had an opportunity to move from California to Chicago, the second largest city in the US. I figured I'm going to make connections with people there. And also, one of the things I realized I wasn't doing was being my authentic self. And
uh-huh,
so I thought, well, I've never shared the fact that I wanted to be trans with anybody in California. So I'm going to do it now in Chicago. And sure enough, I met the right people, the queer community. They helped me with this transition. And Caitlyn Jenner was coming out, all those things that really made it absolutely feel right. And
mm,
and in that community, I thought that was where I'm going to find my people. I was going to find my tribe, and it didn't work. It
mm.
didn't work. I still felt disconnected. And so when decades of trying, I realized that the first thing I need to do is become a friend to myself. And so now that I know that, I have to tell everybody about it. It's so amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so funny how they say sometimes it's right under your nose, like literally right under your nose, the answer. Um, so what does it mean to be a friend to yourself?
Well, I think that being a friend to yourself really means that you know yourself. You
Mm,
know yourself, and people say know and love yourself, but I think that knowing and understanding yourself is love.
mm,
It's knowing who you are, what you want, and how you're going to get it. So those are aligned with your actions, your values, your thoughts, your ideas, all of that stuff, knowing it about yourself. So I used to um like be afraid of people who really knew themselves, who really knew themselves. They give off this kind of energy that everything's okay and they're fine no matter what you do.
mm,
And I used to be afraid of those kind of people. I'm like, whoa, I'm afraid of them. I couldn't look at them. I couldn't look them in the eye. I didn't want to be around them. And I didn't know why. What about myself? This was my beginning of this discovery. What about myself made me feel that way? And furthermore, I resented them. I'm like,
Mm,
why did I resent them? I don't know. And
mm,
so the first step that I discovered was learning more about myself and what I'm feeling in these moments,
mm.
being more mindful of what I'm feeling in these moments, especially around those people who seem calm, cool, and collective. Man, I didn't like those people at all. And
Yeah,
I just didn't know why. And so
yeah.
being a friend of yourself means like knowing that about yourself.
Right, right. So, and just, because this is my job, interjecting a little psychology into that, that's what we would call our shadow, right? So what the Jungian shadow is those parts of us that we've disowned. So when we see something in someone that we don't know why we don't like it about them, what we don't like about them, it's a really good indication that we've disowned a part of ourselves that when we see it reflected outside of us, it upsets
Yeah.
us for some reason, right? Yeah, I don't know why I don't like that person. I do not like that person, and that's what it is it's a really good indicator to say, okay, what have I disowned in myself? And for your story, it's like being able to or recognizing that you're disowning that part of acceptance and knowledge of who you are, and well, knowledge and then acceptance of who you are, and
Absolutely.
celebrating that.
Absolutely, because further on in my journey, I discovered that, well, I didn't like myself. I didn't like myself. And the reflection of how they're so cool and calm and okay with the world, I was not that. And I resented them because they are able to be that. And I wasn't. I was
Mm,
angry about that, angry and
right,
like, ah.
right,
So,
right.
and then, and then, so if I could just share a little more about what it means to be a friend to yourself, it's also knowing the other parts of yourself, like being what brings you joy and what
Mm,
other emotions, what triggers those things. And so knowing that about yourself is important.
yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure there are people listening who are saying, well, that sounds great. How do I do that? What are some steps people can take to become a friend to themselves?
Well, becoming a friend to yourself requires, like I say, understanding of who you are. And there are three key features that I look at to help us understand or help me understand who I am and how I show up in the world. And
Mm,
so the first thing I look at is my history, where I've come from physically, emotionally, how I grew up, like the place that I grew up in, the family dynamics, those things. Just knowing those about myself
mm,
is important, and it's important to connect with yourself. And then your history, you have your hobbies. So the things that bring you joy. I just mentioned a second ago that it's really important to know those things that bring you joy, because you're always going to gravitate to those things. You're always going to want to get up and give your energy to those things. So you want to know what they are. You want to be intentional about doing the things that regenerate and rejuvenate you. And then finally, your habits. Your habits are your daily activities, the things that you do from a day-to-day basis. Like, be mindful, because many of us, including me, would just think, well, what do you do every day? Nothing. What'd you do today? Nothing. No, no,
mm,
no. You've done something every single day. You're just not really verbalizing it, or you don't think it's important enough, but it is who you are.
mm,
Everything you do every day, it is who you are. If you're watching social media, if you're on social media all day, then you're doing something. You're on social media, and just notice that. That's
mhm.
all. And yeah,
Yeah, that sounds very much like meditation, like a constant meditation. So when we're in meditation, and obviously thoughts come into your mind when you're in meditation, the guidance around that is just notice them. Just
mm,
notice them without judgment, right? And I think that's a big part of it too. I wonder if you agree, is when you know, oh, I was on social media for 3 hours today, just noticing that and saying, okay, instead of judging, like I shouldn't be doing that.
yes.
We should get rid of the word should in our vocabulary, I think.
I love that.
Because it's very damning,
Hmm.
instead of just saying, oh, that's what happened today. Okay. And I
Yes.
accept that. Yeah.
Yes, it just steals the focus of the purpose of I think getting to know yourself, with saying I should, I should, I should. Well, that's a really big block into seeing what you actually are doing and
Mm,
being okay with what you actually are doing, getting to know it, getting to accept it, and stop resenting yourself and, doing all that damage to yourself.
yeah, for sure. So, and this is something that I've written about, and I would love to hear your perspective on it, because I think it's an essential aspect of getting to know yourself. What are the benefits of having this kind of intimacy with ourselves, this closeness with ourselves?
Oh, the intimacy and closeness with ourselves it's so beautiful because much like the person I described who's cool and calm that I resented, that person was still pretty much very attractive to me. They
Mm,
were something that made me feel safe, but also feel scared of. I had conflicting emotions because of the way I felt about myself.
mm,
Right. And so when you build this intimacy with yourself, you get this knowing of how you're going to act, how you're going to behave, who you're going to be in any given situation. And if you don't know those things about yourself, you still have this resilience. If you were put in a new situation in which you have never experienced before, your sense of self, your intimacy with yourself still gives you an idea that you're going to be okay and you're going to be safe. You'll be able to handle it,
mm,
whatever situation, whatever outcome it is, you're going to be able to handle it. You're going to have a mindset of where you're curious and you're going to understand or you're going to learn from it. And so the intimacy with yourself, the full knowing of who you are, as much knowing as you possibly can of yourself will allow you to just be comfortable and cool and relaxed. And it'll emit this energy that other people who are just as cool, calm, and comfortable and relaxed will be attracted to.
mhm,
They'll be attracted to, and you'll develop friendships and connections with people who really see and celebrate you. This
mhm,
is what I discovered on my journey
right.
is that the more of myself I've been honest with and truthful to, the more people I've attracted that do just that.
Mm,
And not only that, I build a sense of trust with them because I know that they're not really interested in harming me. They
mm,
really don't have anything to gain from that. They really don't feel that. They just feel that they can be curious with me and learn from me.
yeah.
They can be curious and learn from me, and they can share with me. That's so I think that intimacy is what creates those kind of friendships. But the intimacy with yourself has to happen first, and you'll automatically attract those other people.
Yeah, and that kind of brings us back to what you had said earlier at the beginning of your journey, trying to find your tribe,
Hmm.
right? And if that's our energy is, okay, well, I don't like where I am right now. I got to go find my people. There is a desperation that you are exuding,
Yeah.
that I need. And what you
Hmm.
might end up attracting is people who are needy. You know what
Oh
I
my
mean?
goodness.
Did
Don't
that
call me
happen
like
to you,
that.
Coach Lee?
That's exactly what happened to me. Man, I was so miserable.
Oh, yeah. So that really enforces what you just said. When we have that intimacy, and that deep connection to ourselves, what I call in my practice the foundation of self. Once you have that, you really can't be shaken, because you always have yourself to come back to, and you are connected to everything else, right?
Yes.
So it's not as though, and I think people misunderstand this. I don't know if you get this in your practice too, that we're not talking about isolating yourself or being a hermit or being self-absorbed. We're talking about quite the opposite, which is when you have an engine that's running and it's got the good oil in it and the good, it's all greased up and polished up, it works so much better out in the world, right?
Hmm.
With other people.
Absolutely. And I believe that the way to make connections with people, definitely through yourself, understanding yourself, but I believe it is the emotion that connects us. So it's the feeling that we both have, and we can, I guess, express the emotion that we're sharing, that we feel with other people. An
Mm,
analogy that I like to use is like going to a movie together. So you and I go to a movie together, and I love the movie, but you absolutely dislike it. And so we're kind of disconnected on that feeling that we had the similar experience, but we don't feel the same way about it. But it's the expression of that and being curious about it that'll bring us together.
Mhm.
But then if we go to the movie and we both enjoy it, then we can connect on the fact that we enjoy it, and we can have our friendships, and we can really understand it and how people see us. But it's our sense of self to be able to sit in a movie and think about why we enjoyed it, what we're feeling about it, and why we enjoyed it, and that expression with another person. And to develop that skill, you need time alone.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, so you're not activated because somebody didn't agree with you.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that we can have, and I work with couples too, and the mistake is that when you're in a relationship, you want everything to be sweet and kind and loving all the time and never argue, but that's not healthy either. It's how we argue, right? So I say there are two ways to argue. You argue to win or you argue to heal, right?
Mhm.
So if you're both, and this goes well with your movie analogy. If you didn't like the movie and I liked the movie, or vice versa, there's a real opportunity for a lovely in-depth conversation if you can stay grounded.
Yes.
Right, and not feel like,
Yes.
oh, it's a personal attack on me that you're not hearing me, why right.
You're not hearing me why the movie was trash, and this is why it's trash. But okay, that doesn't change the opinion. I don't have to agree with it. I really love the movie. No, the movie's trash. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is really you really need that sense of grounding, and so it shows up in all kinds of relationships. I know that has shown up in my friendships and connections with people. Is that, well, if you're not for me, then you're against me, and
Yeah,
that was it. That was, you're not a
that's
friend.
very scary, that logic, and we see
Hmm.
that actually in particularly in this country right now. We see
Yes.
a lot of splitting, a lot of division, when that's the opposite of what we need right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it is an illusion that we are so different from each other in the first place. I mean, we could connect on the very feeling of I don't feel understood. Like,
Mhm.
well, we're splitting up because we don't feel heard and understood. Well, I also don't feel heard and understood. Well, can somebody stop to hear somebody? Can somebody
Yeah.
take a minute to this
Yeah.
person? They're saying they don't feel heard and understood. So are you. You know how that feels, right? So
Right.
maybe you take a breath and listen to him.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's actually part of the work that I do it with couples is slow down, and we don't work with the you didn't load the dishwasher correctly. We don't talk about that. I mean, that's not what we're talking about. We're
it's
talking
not.
about I don't feel heard and understood. So we got to really slow it down and help each other to look at the emotions underneath what's being said, right? The
Absolutely.
connections that are necessary. And again, to bring it back to this topic, we also need to be very secure in who we are. As you said, you need time alone to reflect on how you feel without outside interference or any kind of suggestions as to how you should feel.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So how would being a friend to yourself, now we've talked about we don't want to be hermits and isolate ourselves, how can being a friend to yourself benefit your other relationships?
Well, being a friend to yourself, I believe it means to be grounded in who you are. We talked about that, like really being secure in how you feel and being okay with expressing that, or also being okay with not expressing it, not
Mm,
being heard. You're not going to be activated because even if people don't validate you, that's how you feel. And that is you. And that's okay. All
and
of it is okay. Yeah.
yeah.
And so when you develop those kind of friendships, you develop that for yourself. I'm sorry. You get that space where you are comfortable to talk to. Like people will feel like they can just talk to you about things. And since I've become more confident and secure in myself, I just admit that kind of energy and people will just talk to me about things.
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
it's absolutely rewarding. I believe that you feel safe enough for people to be vulnerable. And that's what will show up for you in your other relationships. You'll get to know people on a deeper level. And that's what we all want. We have this desire to be seen, but we're also afraid to be seen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that brings up another important point. When people begin this journey of becoming a friend to themselves, and I hope you can speak to this, sometimes some of our existing relationships have to end or significantly change. Can you,
I am not
I
in a
think that's
therapy
hitting
session
home.
here, but I am in a therapy session today. Yeah, it
I
was
think people
just,
are afraid of that happening. And so I wonder if you might coach us, Coach Lee, around that.
I've had that experience and it is awful. I'm
Mm,
going to tell you it's awful. It doesn't feel good. I realized that. So this is what I did. And I'm going to say I don't recommend you do it, but you have to have your own experiences and you have to see
yeah.
what it is. Maybe you can look at mine and learn something from it without having the experience. But here goes. I met some people that I knew for a long time and we had a nice friend group. And I started to change. Like the pandemic hit and, self-reflection. And I had a bunch of ideas. I wanted to start my company. I wanted to be more serious about it. And, the things that I was discovering about myself in this time alone, I wanted to apply to my friendships.
Mm,
And they didn't like it. We were fine with the friendship dynamic that we had before. They didn't like it. So this is what I did. I wanted to manipulate them.
mm,
That's what I wanted to do. I know everything. This is what I reflect on now. As time had passed, I reflected on now. But what I did was like, I know best. I want to keep this friendship. So I'm going to help you see what I see. I'm going to help you discover what I discover
you're
about
practicing your
this.
coaching.
Yeah, I'm going to
Yeah,
do that.
right.
You didn't ask for this. You
Mhm,
didn't ask for
mhm.
this, but I know better. So I did, and the whole friendship thing exploded. They ended up not liking me, and I realized, well, I also didn't like you because I wanted to change you. So
Mm,
it was a realization that it was so painful to go through. And it wasn't just me though. It wasn't my pain. I'm sure that they wanted to keep the friendship too, but they didn't want to be changed. We had to find things were fine the way they were. I changed. And so therefore I had to accept that I had to let go. And
mhm,
when I let go, I stopped putting energy into changing them. I had more energy to focus on what I can change about myself. So if I so choose, I had more energy to learn more about what I really wanted instead of focusing on fixing some people who didn't want to be fixed, who were fine the way they were, who probably discovered more about themselves without somebody lurching over them, trying to tell them that they need to change.
mhm.
So it is a painful experience, but it is necessary as a part of growth.
Yeah.
And I believe that we're all much more delighted in ourselves. And as I think about this, it doesn't mean that they aren't doing their own personal growth and that we can't return to each other someday.
Mm. I love that. I love that. Yeah, and we have to remember that. I mean, as I'm listening to your story, I was thinking even your desire to help them wake up to the path was an act of love because you wanted to keep the friendship. And
Hmm.
maybe it wasn't received that way, but it really does bring to mind something that I also talk to my patients a lot about, was we can't change anyone else. We can only change ourselves. And you, as you rightly said, they're on their own journeys.
Hmm.
We're all put on this planet to learn whatever lessons we're here to learn. And we learn them at different paces and in different directions. And so so that's why looking at ourselves as point north of,
Hmm.
of our journey is makes it easier for our people to come to us, to gravitate to us. And as you said, sometimes relationships shift or change or end, and I've certainly experienced that as well. There's nothing that says that your paths might cross again one day, and that's a really
Absolutely.
lovely way to look at it. Like you close the door but you leave it open a crack, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we don't I believe that if the door is open, we will interact in a different way than the next time we meet because
Yes.
I know that I'm different.
Yeah.
And whether or not they changed, I know that I'm different.
Hmm. Right. And that's all we can be responsible for is ourselves. That's
Hmm.
beautiful. So, Coach Lee, how can people find you?
Well, you can find me when I'm not trying to change people's lives unfold. You
When I'm
can
not busy doing things that I'm not asked to do.
you can find me at patternsofpossibility.com, and I'm on all social media at Patterns of Possibility. I have a 5-day friendship challenge that you can sign up for to help you make those kind of connections that you're looking for.
Beautiful. All right. I'm going to have all of your connection links and all of that on the show notes. Coach Lee Hopkins, thank you so much for being on Self Talk today.
Thank you for having me so much, Rachel. I appreciate it.
Hi, this is Rachel, the host of Self Talk with Rachel Astarte, also known as the best podcast you've never heard. Well, let's see if we can change that. If you would take a moment, please, to hit the subscribe button and maybe even that little bell next to it that lets you know when we release a new episode, which is every other week. Thank you so much.